My name is Stephen Eichler. I'm walking through a Palo Alto neighborhood called Greenmeadow. My grandfather, Joseph Eichler, built this neighborhood 40 years ago. This series celebrates Greenmeadow, still vital after 40 years. In 1953, this was nothing but raw land in the southern end of Palo Alto, next to Stanford and 30 miles south of San Francisco. Joseph Eichler, my grandfather, a developer of architect-designed and affordable tract housing, built the subdivision known as Greenmeadow during a time when the economy was suffering. The houses in this tract were the most expensive he had built in Palo Alto to date. To substantiate the value, a variance was obtained from the city, and each lot was allowed to be smaller, with the remaining land to be used for a community center and pool. Today, and even then, this feature is not unique. What makes Greenmeadow unique are the events that led up to the control of the community center and pool, the manner in which it is governed, and the real value it provides to the community. This program will explore the beginning, the many events, and the people that made and make Greenmeadow still vital after 40 years. Please join me on this journey through the past as we hear from the many people who have raised their families here, participated in the running of the community center and pool, and enjoyed the many events from babysitting clubs to the 4th of July parades. The real value, though, takes shape as you become aware of the strength that Greenmeadow possesses as a community within a large city. This strength is seen in the ability to organize and rally for or against a cause, in the camaraderie of residents looking out for one another, and in the spirit of life that the Greenmeadow community spreads through its association. This is the first in a series of 5 programs about Greenmeadow. In this program, we present an overview on Greenmeadow, its past, present, and future.
I'm Pete McCloskey, and just about 40 years ago, maybe 38 years ago, when I was a young lawyer and didn't have any gray hair, and before I'd been in politics, I and my wife, after trying to live in Alameda County and being a district attorney in Oakland, decided that I wanted to be a country lawyer. And Palo Alto had 40 lawyers in it at that time, and so we came back and we looked at some houses under construction by a very famous builder named Eichler. And Joe Eichler was a canny old gentleman, but he was building 243 homes, and he did it with a combination of glass and wood. That it was very charming. They were garden apartment houses. And we looked at one, and it was in the days when if you were a veteran, you paid nothing down and got a 4.5% loan. So any young couple with 2 or 3 children, which was me, and no income, could afford an Eichler home. And we looked at this tract. It was called Greenmeadow, and it was built in a lovely 243 homes around I would say, an acre community center. It had a nice lawn and a building and a big swimming pool.
It's in the southern part of Palo Alto, almost out of Palo Alto, almost over into Mountain View, and then it's located across from a high school that used to be, but is no longer a high school, and it's about a couple of miles, not even a couple of miles, about a mile from the railroad tracks. Other than that, I don't know. Generally, if I tell people, I say it's between San Antonio and Charleston, and it's between Alma and Middlefield.
But there's some other subdivisions in there, and the way Greenmeadow developed was that Greenmeadow 1 is where we are, and it strings itself out. Along behind Cubberley High School is our common boundary there. Then Greenmeadow 2 sort of went from the backyards of this side of Parkside, and then that was developed at a later time and became Greenmeadow 2. There's Fern Street that comes in there where there are some different kinds of houses, and that was all that was left at that time, and Eichler got a portion of that and built some of the later designs, some of the ones that have the atriums. And that's, some years later, became Greenmeadow 3.
My grandfather worked, and it's a common known story, worked in the butter and egg business for many years. He got into that business after graduating from college and marrying into, or his wife's family was in the butter and egg business, and there he went right into the business. How he got into the home building business, there's sort of two stories there. One is more of having left the butter and egg business and having retired early at the age of 45 and looking for something else to do. He got involved with a prefabricated home building business in Sunnyvale. There's another story that says that he, after having lived in a Frank Lloyd Wright house in Hillsborough, that he got very fascinated about the design characteristics of the house and wanted to build the same characteristics into a house that was affordable to the masses.
Eventually, there were so many of them going on at one time that he needed more architects, and he got Jones and Emmons from Southern California, who had been doing the same thing down there in the Los Angeles area. And they added their expertise, and as a matter of fact, the entire Greenmeadow subdivision was by Jones and Emmons.
We went to look at these new model homes that Joe had, and this is the one, we looked at them all, but this is the one that we liked. We liked the orientation of it. It was east-west, got a lot of light. It had 4 bedrooms, because we were only a 4-bedroom house in the 5 houses here. And we needed room. 4 girls and 1 boy. So anyways, we went to the opening house, and we talked to Joe after we looked at the other build. We said to him we would be interested in this model home here, which is all landscape. The others were not landscape. This was completely done by church. So anyways, he says, well, he says, I'm sorry, he says, but I can't help you. And he was a little rough with me, but I says, well, I need 4 bedrooms, and I got 5, got these kids I got to put in them, and now, can't you help me a little bit? He says, no, he says, this is a model home. He says, we don't sell model homes until all the tract is sold. Okay, Joe, I says, well, when do you think you'll be ready? He says, well, I can't tell you. I don't know. All depends how fast they're sold. Well, everything up out here was all under construction. We were the only 5 houses in the whole area. So I said to Joe, and a few days later, I says, Joe, gee, I says, you know, I still want to buy your house. He says, well, I can't buy it because it's not for sale. It's a model home. I says, well, why can't you make an exception of this? I have a dire need for bedrooms. I says, let's you're a salesman, I'm a salesman. Let's get together and be reasonable. So he says, well, no, there was some lady that ran this as an assistant for him, and she was, Joe would look at her and says, shake his head, so she would get the message that we don't do those things. Well, I kept after him for about 2-3 weeks. And I says, Joe, listen, I think you're being not reasonable with me. I says, you could help me a hell of a lot, my family, if you would just sell this house to us. So finally he says, listen, he says, you've been bothering me a lot, and I'll tell you, you can have it. I says, Joe, I love you.
Once we saw the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright in Hillsborough and saw a similarity here, we didn't have to look any further.
I was active in the community association or the community efforts from the very beginning, which wasn't long in showing up. There were community meetings before. I don't know that there was even foreseen to be a homeowners association. It wasn't automatic like with condominiums today that you had to have one, but there were neighborhood meetings, at least to advise us what was going on, keep track of things. It was a community relations thing, I think, by the Eichler organization. In part, it was a channel through which the usual post-construction modest complaints about old grade or missed paint or nails that stick out someplace and the like. But it was also the place where we heard about the functions of the community center and the swimming pool, and Chuck Thompson, who was managing the pool and offering lessons, and Peggy Stoffel, who was the wife of one of Eichler's salespeople. They lived in the tract, and she was running a nursery school or preschool, whatever you would call it in those days, even then. And thereby hangs a tale, as a lot of people from the old times will remember.
After the houses were sold, and I can't remember the date, but it was probably something that we realized in the early 1955, we were told that one of the Eichler Corporation employees was going to run the school and the swimming school, run a swimming school, and be manager of the pool, and that his wife, Peggy, was going to run the nursery school. We saw that as a threat to our exclusive use and control and management of the pool. And so we had a meeting, and remember Len Cornell was, I think, an agent for the Eichler Corporation and represented the Eichler Corporation, and we had some discussion about what was going on, and we were assured by Len that everything was going to go fine. The decision was made that evening, and I guess I was the spokesperson at the time, or at least had made myself the spokesperson, and suggested that we should meet the Eichler Corporation on even terms. That is, there was a corporation there, and we were just a group of, people not disorganized, but certainly unorganized. So it was my recommendation that I made in the form of a motion that we form an association, incorporate under the laws of California. So we did. And we drew up an articles of incorporation and bylaws. The articles were signed on July 16, 1955, setting ourselves up as an association and having rules that we had an association that went with the property. We didn't want a country club atmosphere. We didn't want people to sell their shares and make a profit. So we consulted, after writing the articles, we consulted with Pete McCloskey, our attorney by that time, and he approved them and said they were fine and made a few minor changes, and we went on from there. Then we began a very long process from then until Thanksgiving Day 1955 of negotiating with Joseph Eichler.
But shortly after I started to practice law, I hung out my shingle, and I didn't have any clients. I didn't have any prospective clients. But a young couple came to me from Eichler, and they had bought a home in the Greenmeadow tract, and they were I won't say outraged, but terribly disappointed when after the 243rd home was sold by the Eichler empire, because it was an empire. He built half the houses in South Palo Alto, I think, in various parts of time, and Palo Alto was spreading out towards Mountain View, which was a sort of a cherry orchard town that was really a cannery town. Mountain View and Sunnyvale started as rural, built around the orchards of what was then the lovely Santa Clara Valley. And after he'd sold the 243rd home, it appeared in the paper that Mr. Eichler had leased the swimming pool to a famous swimming pool operator who was going to pay a substantial sum of money and give swimming lessons on the property. And the residents said, well, if he's going to lease it, how many hours a day is he going to lease it for, and will we only get it in the odd hours? And it appeared that that was the case. So they hired me, and I think I charged $5 per head. I don't think all 243 homes had been purchased then, but in any event, at least 50 people put up $5 each and came to me, and I found a case where the identical thing had happened back in the 20s in a park north of Los Angeles in the mountains, where they had sold homes based on the common use of a common area, and then the developer had sort of pulled back the unrestricted use of the common area. And these Greenmeadow folks, there were about 10 driving forces. 2 of them later went to the city council of Palo Alto. One became mayor. John Burwald, Chris Swang, who was a famous eye doctor, developed the laser beam surgery later. But these were all young couples. They all had 3 or 4 kids, and they wanted to use that swimming pool more hours than Mr. Eichler had allowed after he announced his lease. And I told them, I said, well, you got 14 couples, but the first name, the case is always going to be known as Jones versus Eichler or Burwald versus Eichler, and none of them wanted to have their name in the lawsuit. None of them ever been in the lawsuit. And I prepared this complaint alleging that they had a right to use that swimming pool. And they drew straws, and the guy that lost was a brassiere salesman. I think it was Jim Farr, name like that, Farr or Farquhar. So the case was Farr versus Eichler. And the guy said, but you know, we kind of like old Joe Eichler. He's built these great homes. We love these homes. Let's see if we can talk him out of having to sue him. So Burwald and Swing and I went over to see Joe Eichler, and we sat in his office, and I said, Joe, we all have a lot of respect for you. Here's the complaint we've got to file tomorrow in case you're going to stick to this position that these people don't want to or don't get to use the pool except when your swimming instructor allows them.
Thanksgiving Eve, Mr. Eichler called us down to his office on El Camino in Cambridge, I believe it was. And Pete McCloskey came, Don Lundgren, myself, Chris Swang, Nadell Landros. I think those are the ones that were on the board then. Don Lundgren was there. I might have mentioned his name. And Mr. Eichler offered the property to us at $20,000. Well, everybody in the room thought that was a pretty good deal. And I said no, and so we'll give you 10. And he said, okay, I'm tired of all this. You know, he wasn't very happy with what was going on, and neither were we. So we had to collect $10,000 by Christmas Eve, I believe it was.
We had to come up with earnest money immediately. I was an assistant secretary to the association board at that time and was instantly involved in going around getting written signed pledges from at least, somebody help me with the math, 200 of the 243 residents for $50 each to buy the community center. And we went over the top, although not by much.
One of the defining characteristics of the Greenmeadow neighborhood is the architecture of the Eichler homes. To learn more about this architecture, we've decided to visit some architects who live in Greenmeadow. Hi, I'm Stephen Eichler, and this is Casey and Mark Marcinick, who are living in Greenmeadow. Why are you living in an Eichler home in Greenmeadow?
When our son was born, we spent several years looking for a house outside of the city, in the suburbs. And we had seen all these neighborhoods with modern houses, and that's really what we wanted, was to live in a modern house, in modern architecture. And it turns out that we were able to buy this house mostly because it had been abandoned and pretty much destroyed. It was a real fixer-upper. And it just turned out that it was in Greenmeadow, which we didn't know anything about the neighborhood when we bought the house, but of course it was wonderful to find out. So we've been fixing the house up for the last 3 years.
So what are you doing in remodeling this house? What are you concentrating on?
Well, we had to really replace every finish in the house. So we're trying to, we thought about doing a real dedicated restoration where we put the mahogany paneling back and all that. And what we're trying to do instead is some of our own design ideas. The house is now more of a custom architectural home within the shell of the Eichler Builder tract home.
So as two architects, do you have, what are some of the elements that you are trying to accomplish?
Well, there's a sort of spirit of modern design in these houses. The original architect was interested in showing the structure of the house, how it's built. You have beams that show, how they carry the roof, and there's a definite concept to unite inside and outside spaces. So there's all kinds of sort of conceptual things that we're trying to illuminate by painting the beams a different color than the ceiling. You can sort of sense the structure of the building. The house itself is zoned, which was something new for the 50s, where you have a separate bedroom wing and a sort of utility wing, and then a sort of open living, entertaining wing, which is connected to the outside entertaining living spaces. So we're sort of keeping all those sort of by color and different textures, again, sort of illustrating that they're different, separate things, and that's how these buildings are conceived.
As architects, what is it about Eichler's that appealed to you?
As we started to research it, we saw that it was a major, very talented architect had designed this, and that through time, people have sort of forgotten the significance of these houses. And just as sort of socially we're sort of reevaluating 50s values and 60s values now, people are also reevaluating what 50s architecture, modern design is all about. So in some ways we sort of wanted to educate or to illustrate what we had found out about these houses. So if you see different colors, and sometimes they're exaggerated, so we're trying to show the different elements and parts and how things were constructed. Because these houses are unique in that people thought about those things. There's definitely an architectural concept and a social and space planning concept in these houses.
A lot of new homes today have this great room concept where you have the kitchen and part of the family room, and everybody sort of mingles in with the cook and all that. But in the 50s, it was pretty unusual for Eichler homes to do this, and they had, just a partial wall between the kitchen and the living room, and then it opened out to what they used to call the hanging coffin, the overhead cabinet, and the table for people to actually sit in the kitchen and eat. So we've kept that concept because obviously it still works today, better than ever.
Well, it's been called the idiom of the 50s, and in my architectural career, that's what it was. I was part of the 50s movement in architecture, and it was a lot of people claim that it's based a lot on Frank Lloyd Wright, but it's less on Wright than it is in some of the later architects like Richard Neutra. Richard Neutra is the one who sort of pioneered the idea that a house should not make a barrier between the inside and the outside. And that was the essence of his architecture, was, excuse me, to blend the inside and the outside with certain details. And these houses, well, it's first of all the post and beam idea, but then it's the idea of minimizing the transition from inside to outside.
There's a lot of parallels you can make between the architecture, which is sort of an architecture structure, and a social structure. When we first moved in, it was really incredible that like neighbors would come over, and we were wondering why they're coming over and talking to us, and it was sort of different than what we had seen in San Francisco. And it's just like the architecture is connected to its environment and open to its environment, so there seems to be a social structure that's also open. It's almost like becoming a member of a club when you move here, because you immediately have access to 270 people.
Perhaps the most significant aspect of that open communication is the Greenmeadow Community Association.
Greenmeadow Community Association was formed, I believe, in 1954 by some of our original residents. It's been functioning ever since then, and our association is a neighborhood association. We have a formal board of directors elected by the residents to a term of 2 years, and we oversee the functioning of the community. We have several very active committees that we oversee. We have an administrative manager. We have I think up to 15 lifeguards now that work part-time through the summer and into the swim season. And we have a park and a building and insurance and all kinds of business to run. The association owns quite a bit of property, actually. We have a park that is for members only, which is a beautiful redwood groved park. It connects to the pool, which is a lovely large big pool. And then we have a building which we rent out right now to Discovery Montessori School. That's our community center, and we do use that for some community activities. Although the pool is the centerpiece to a lot of the activities that we do as a community, and it's a main reason why a lot of people join. It's terrific if you have kids, and a lot of us swim laps in the morning, and it's where we have a lot of our events. We also have a lot of non-pool related activities that I think are vital to this organization. The Civic Affairs Committee has been active for decades. I'm not sure how many years, but I bet 25 or 30 years.
Civic Affairs Committee is one of the committees appointed by the board of Greenmeadow Community Association, and essentially I think their role is to be the liaison between the association and what's happening with city government or city government entities in the city of Palo Alto. And that works both ways. We bring back information to the association members that we have learned through various contacts with the government or by attending meetings. And then we also are the spokespersons for the association when we need to have testimony, if you will, at various meetings. I think the meetings that we probably have had more contact with have been Planning Commission and City Council meetings, but we have also attended various committee meetings and hearings and so forth.
I think the fact that it has had over the years an active community association has been reflected in the effectiveness of this community when it has appeared before city councils, before the one that I am currently sitting on. I think that the city council has been well aware of the fact that when the Greenmeadow Community Association represents itself at a city council forum, because of the way the association conducts its business, the city council can be assured that when a representative of the association speaks for the association, that they truly do represent the vast majority of homeowners in the area. And that gives any governing body a great deal of comfort.
A blockhead is a person, designated person on a row of about 10 houses or 12 houses who is willing to be the contact between the association and the individual residents. And it is therefore the responsibility of the blockhead to deliver the monthly meadowlarks, and if there is a vote that needs to be taken about something, for instance, whether we should renew our covenant things or change them, then it's the responsibility of the blockhead to contact each house. If we are wanting to get an active petition going because we want to get a footbridge, or if we want to get Cubberley Center declared a city park or something, then the blockhead would be asked to solicit on her block and get signatures. The blockhead is supposed always to come to the quarterly meetings, so that if there is a problem on her particular or his particular street, that it can be brought before the association.
The Greenmeadow Board of Directors meets on a monthly basis, and we hear committee reports from the various committees that have been functioning. We also are responsible for holding a meeting on a quarterly basis for the entire membership, and we do that in January, April, July, and October. And those meetings are a really good opportunity for all of the community members to come together and find out what's been going on, to air their views and their thoughts, their ideas, and really participate in running the community.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine today. How are you?
Good. Who are you?
I'm Chris Kachowski, and I'm the administrative manager.
What does that mean?
I administrate. No, I organize, and the money that comes through the facility to keep the pool open, and the people that we hire and train and coordinate most of the special events and stuff like that.
And this is a full-time job?
Full-time job, yeah.
How did you find out about it?
I knew the previous administrative manager. Yeah.
And why did you want to do this?
It was a big jump for me on the learning curve, from just being a pool manager to getting all that extra responsibility of being in charge of all the money that comes through the club, the financial part of it, and the organization too. And working with volunteers, that was a big thing that I didn't do before.
Really?
The Meadowlark is the little local newspaper, okay, that's been in existence almost, I guess, since day one, which comes out once a month, and I've already received my copies for the month of May. It's put out by Joe Mandel, and it's our little local newspaper. But I used to refer to it when I was editor as the greatest Palo Alto newspaper south of Charleston Road, you know.
The Greenmeadow community organizes lots of events all year long. We have a pretty full calendar. We have a Memorial Day picnic and a Labor Day picnic, which are potluck events in the park where everyone brings their favorite dish, and it's really a fun time to just, in a very informal way, get to know your neighbors. We have a house and garden tour, which we've been having for years and years, where neighbors can go and do a tour of the neighborhood, looking at 5 or 10 different houses that have been either redone or remodeled, or gardens that have just been done.
Gee, Elif, do you know what season this is?
Well, it's spring. I know that.
Yeah, and you know what that means?
The house and garden tour.
Right, isn't that great? You know how people really enjoy seeing the house and garden tour and what people have done to their homes, and
people look forward to it year after year. They wait for it to get ideas before they remodel their own home. I don't know that there's any thing that happens in Greenmeadow that's quite as distinctive.
Right, that's true. Now
the house and garden tour started probably about 25, 30 years ago, and we have a committee that's made up of different people every year. This year, Elith Burns, Gail Schiffman, and myself, Terry Silverman, were on the committee. And we have a certain amount of houses, usually anywhere between 4 to 6 houses on the tour.
The people will show anything that they've remodeled in the past year or so. They'll show a garden, they'll show a kitchen, they'll show a bathroom or a bedroom. Some people show their whole house. Oh, here we are at Betty's.
Oh,
Betty's on the tour this year.
That's right, yeah.
Well, let's go up and thank her.
Yes.
Hi, Betty. Hi. We're here to thank you for being on the House and Garden Tour.
Well, welcome. Please come right on in.
In the first place, the scholarship fund was started with a drowning in our pool. The Douglas boy, the older Douglas boy, went over the fence at 2 o'clock in the morning. He loved swimming, he loved underwater swimming, and he apparently was swimming illegally, really, you know, underwater, and didn't come up. They found him dead the next morning. He drowned in our pool. The president of the association came to me and said, I think it would be nice if we had something done in his memory, a scholarship, for example. And I've even forgotten that president's name because he was here for only a couple of years. But I said, well, don't you think, I said I'd be willing to tackle the job, but don't you think it would be nice to talk to the parents first? The Douglases, who live down 2 or 3 doors down here. And so I went down and talked to the Douglases and told them that we wanted to establish this fund in memory of their son, Scott Douglas. And they not only agreed to the idea, but they also came up and handed me a check for $500. And that was a lot of money back in those days because you remember our membership was around $50 a year back then. So I went to the board along with a couple of other people, and as I recall, those people were Tom Mulcahy, who lives over here on Scripps Court. Tom Mulcahy was one. He was the vice president, became vice president. Tom Mulcahy was one. And either Drew Lawrence or Fred Crenshaw was the other. But we went to the board then, having been asked by the president to do this, having received the permission, plus a first donation from the Douglases, and the board turned it down. I think they were afraid of liability, you know, affiliated, possible liability affiliated with the whole scene. So the board in its wisdom turned it down, and I said to the board, well, you know, I'm sitting here with $500 in my pocket, and whether you like it or not, there is going to be a scholarship fund.
We have awarded grants to Greenmeadow seniors every year since then and have established an endowed fund, so we anticipate doing this far into the future. We also give scholarships to students from Menlo Atherton, minority students in particular, to extend our sense of community to include that area. And we have given awards in that to Menlo Atherton students for the last 20 years. Finalists for the award receive a book, a reference book of their choice, and then the winner this year, $1,000 to a Greenmeadow senior and $1,000 to a Menlo Atherton senior.
Okay, so first of all, I want you to just tell me your name.
Melissa Silverman.
Okay, and you are on the Greenmeadow swim team?
That's correct.
And how long have you been on the team?
This is my 11th year.
11th year.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you first started?
I was 6.
Oh, that's great. And I understand you're now a coach on the team.
That's right. This is my 2nd year coaching. Last year I was the assistant coach, and this year we're all doing a co-coach program.
Step up on the blocks.
So tell me a little bit about what is the Greenmeadow swim team? Tell me a little bit about what it is and what it's been like for you to be on the team.
Well, what it is it's a beginning program for kids who are younger. They usually start out when they're younger, and it's not a very high-structured competitive program. It's we're more out there to have fun and to do the best that we can do. We have a lot of I have 2 4-year-olds that we just started out this year. And then when they came, they couldn't do any of the strokes, and now they're swimming the length of the pool. It's great to see the progress that the kids make. And last year we had Matthew Wilson, who would, in the diving pool, he would just hand walk across the wall and wouldn't dare let go. And then by the end of the year, he could do all of his strokes really well. It was really great to see.
So let me just ask you all your names first of all.
Elizabeth Maples, Heidi Beck, Christina Simons, Allison Belden, Elise Barbori.
And you're all on the Greenmeadow swim team, is that right?
Yes.
And how long have you each been on?
I've been on, this is my 4th year. This is my 2nd year. This is my 3rd year. This is my 1st year. This is my 4th year.
Okay, well let me ask you, since this is your first year, what's it like to be on the swim team?
It's fun, and I especially like the meets.
You like the meets?
Uh-huh.
Have you won any races today?
What?
Have you won any races today?
I don't know.
Okay. You don't know until it's over?
No, I don't know.
Okay. And how about the rest of you? How do you like being on the team? How is it different? I mean, you can look back and see what it was like for her when she first joined. So how is it different now that you've been on the team for a few years? Anybody?
Okay, well, it's changed a lot, especially the team bathing suit, which has just about changed every year, but the team hasn't changed very much, and it seems just the way it was 4 years ago.
Okay.
It changed from this bathing suit to that bathing suit.
Okay. So this is last year's.
This is last year's, and that's this year's. Well, I think this year I like it a little bit better because I'm one of the older people in my group, and I've improved a lot. So.
How about you?
Well, I like it. It's gotten easier because you know how to do the stroke better, and you feel more comfortable in the water than like I did a couple years ago. I really like the coaches. They're really nice.
You like the coaches? Did they do a good job?
Yeah. They did.
Have you learned a lot about swimming from them?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, thanks a lot. So you guys are all members of the Greenmeadow swim team, is that right?
Yes.
So let me ask each of you your name and your age.
My name is Sasha Gurvich, and I'm 8 years old. My name's Jenny Marks, and I'm 9 years old. My name's Naomi Brands, and I'm 8 years old. My name's Allison Beck, and I'm 8 years old. My name's Becca Gurvich, and I'm 8 years old.
Okay. And how long have each of you been on the swim team?
For 3 years.
3 years?
This is my first year. 3 years. 2 years. 3 years.
Okay. And so, how do you like being on the team? What's your favorite part of being on the swim team?
Doing the races and swimming against the other teams. My favorite part's the meets. I have a lot of fun doing breaststroke every meet. I like the championship meet.
For event 33.
What is the championship meet?
It's like where all of the teams are together, and they.
Okay.
Numbers up on the block.
Is that here at the Greenmeadow pool or somewhere else?
No gun.
Okay.
And my favorite is the relay meet.
Okay.
Our first 4th of July started the following year, I think in '55. We started out, and the first parade we had, as I remember, was George Evie.
This preceded at about 9 o'clock in some running activities.
Oh, that's right. That I don't get to see. Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether they have a biathlon or a triathlon or what they have in addition to a regular marathon. And that was usually organized by Mike Ardley. because of the grading of Greenmeadow, they did provide some automobiles to come up at the end of the parade. I don't know, they wanted to make some noise and I wasn't in the band, so I got out my bell and started ringing the bell.
And then the band, that the Mandels are quite responsible in getting this band together every year, and kids that used to live here come back as young adults to be in it. And the little girls in there with their flags and doing their marching and routines. It's a big tradition.
Well, we're at the Greenmeadow 4th of July. This is probably our 10th or 11th 4th of July. We came to the first one about 6 months before Preston was born in 1983. And I think we've been to every one since.
Now, how did you end up in Greenmeadow?
Well, I grew up in Palo Alto, and my family and I moved into an Eichler house in the Fairmeadow tract in about 1958. So I'm an Eichler child, and I'd always hoped to have an Eichler of my own. And when we were pregnant with Preston, we decided to shop around, and were fortunate enough to find an Eichler in Greenmeadow, which when I was a kid in the Fairmeadow tract, Greenmeadow was always the place to be because of the pool and the community center, and this seemed to be where all the action was. So I'm real pleased to be living here now.
So how long have you lived here now then?
11 years.
11 years.
Now, Edith or Terry, have you been involved in what goes on here and the activities and the board and all
That's
that?
Edith.
That's Edith's department, okay. Well, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been on the board. I'm on the board the second time now. The January after we moved in, Ann Justice called me and asked me if I'd be on the social committee. I didn't know Ann Justice from Adam. I didn't know what the social committee was. I didn't know what any of this was. But I said I'd attend, and I've been on the social committee about every year for the last 10 years. And I've run the 4th of July a couple of times. I do the house and garden tour every year with a couple of my friends that I met on my first experience on the social committee. And I guess I really like participating. Oh, I've been on the President's Advisory Council. I helped get the new administrative manager in. I just like participating because the people that you participate with are all very interested in what goes on in our community, and and it's always very rewarding.
But I look at it as the community center and the park and the pool give the community a common problem to solve, and I think that's what really makes community, is when people get together to solve problems of mutual interest. And most neighborhoods these days don't have that. They've kind of turned that over to their local government, or they simply don't get involved. They don't perceive there being any local problems. So I see the community center as kind of in a way, besides the benefits it provides in terms of recreation and activities, it gives the community a problem to solve together that brings them closer.
Okay, ready? Set, go!
Hi there.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
You are?
Ross Meacham.
Karen Swinehart. Sarah Shimkunos.
Greg the lifeguard. Greg the lifeguard. So that tells me what you guys do here.
Right.
What do you do here?
Make sure people don't die. For an encouraging thought. Yeah, just make everybody happy. Keep it going cool.
What do you like about working here? Any of you?
It's fun.
Why?
It's just pretty easy going. It's nice.
Now, Ross, I understand you grew up here?
Yeah, across the street.
What do you like about growing up here?
It's fun. There's always stuff to do. The park and the pool and stuff, and lots of kids around.
There's always kids around their age to play with.
Greg?
The thing I like best about working at Greenmeadow is providing a safe, fun atmosphere for the kids as well as the parents. Really like to make everybody feel welcome who comes to the pool, and let them know that this is a great place to be, a great place to have fun.
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing. Nothing else, nothing more?
No. Well, I grew up here too.
You did?
So I always came here, and I was always here and just hung out and became a junior lifeguard, and then I became a lifeguard. So
What did you
it's
like about
my life.
What did you like about growing up around here?
Just the family atmosphere and everything like that. It's just a lot of fun.
Anything to add?
I guess I like working in the sun instead of working in an office, and I grew up here, so it's just the next step. You do swimming lessons, swim team, junior lifeguards, and lifeguards. It's like a pattern.
What's next?
College.
Okay.
Owning the pool.
Owning the pool.
Pool manager.
Ross, and yourself? What are you going to go off on?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
Not a clue.
Okay. Greg?
Well, I just know that this is a place I come back to every summer. So I don't live in the area, and I go to school during the year, and it's always a great place to come back to. And even us lifeguards are welcomed here, as well as the community members. So we're all kind of one big community. We're incorporated. It's great.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
40 years ago, Joseph Eichler was barely in the middle of his career in building. Greenmeadow was never again attempted in his work. Had he been able to be around today to see the results of his work here, I think he would be very proud. But I think that it is important to realize that he was the spark to this community. The real value, as I call it, has come from the people who have participated and enjoyed the rewards that this community has to offer. The community center and pool provide a focal point. In 1955, it was a cause to take issue with when the builder viewed the operations and use of the pool in a different way than the new owners had felt it was represented to them when they bought into the community. Over the years, it was and is the center of activity for social functions such as New Year's Eve parties, holiday picnics, swim team events, and civic-minded affairs such as gaining control of the community center and pool, saving Cumberly High School from development into high-density housing, and holding political forums and supporting candidates. Greenmeadow is one neighborhood within the city of Palo Alto, a community within a larger community. It offers a small town environment and atmosphere while still relating to the larger city. Greenmeadow breaks down the suburban sprawl that has occurred most everywhere else in California and the country, where suburbs have grown rapidly around major cities like San Francisco. The Greenmeadow Community and Association encourages active citizenship with all the duties and responsibilities that go along with such rights. This role is done on a purely voluntary basis, as it should be. For 40 years, Greenmeadow has operated as a voluntary association. It survives and thrives on the residents' participation to manage social events, the pool, civic affair activities, and to look out for the future of this community. Joseph Eichler was an innovative merchant builder, using architects to design affordable housing and offering a value uniquely met by the subdivision he developed and the more than 10,000 homes that were built in Northern and Southern California. Eichler homeowners possess a devotion to the architecture and lifestyle in which they live, regardless of the subdivision in which their home is located. Greenmeadow went a step further. 40 years from now, will Greenmeadow still be renowned for its community flavor? Only time will tell. The greater social issues, crime, unmanaged growth, economic and environmental issues, are at Greenmeadow's doorstep as they are everywhere else. Only by studying and learning from the relationships between communities within larger communities, like theirs, can help Greenmeadow to maintain the standard they have set and to help implement similar planning and structure in other urban neighborhoods. Is this lifestyle for everyone? Probably not. But there is an important relationship and respect that is fostered by communities that operate like Greenmeadow. Only through participation can any relationship and respect be built and grow. Greenmeadow offers us an enlightened view that participation in one's community works. What becomes of Greenmeadow and other communities is up to how we value participation.
And to me, I feel like this is not Palo Alto. This is Greenmeadow. And it's a city in itself. And I think and the people that are in here appreciate it too. That's the way we feel since 1954.